We're going to call to order the February board meeting for the North Broward Hospital District. If I could get a roll call, I'd appreciate that. Tricia?
Yes, sir. Roll call.
The roll call, please. Yes.
Commissioner Uri?
Here?
Commissioner Wellens?
Here.
Commissioner Klein?
Here.
Commissioner Whitmore? Here.
Everybody? Awesome. Before we move through to the items on the agenda, including public comments, I wanted to take a minute to have a moment of silence, if we could, for the tragedy that occurred down the street here in our community at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. I know that this is something that has impacted a large group, but in particular, it's really hit home here, as you know. And if we could just honor those folks with a moment of silence, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. Commissioner Greatwire, if you could lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, thanks.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excellent. Patricia, do we have any public comments?
Yes, Commissioner, we have Pastor Allen.
Okay.
Thank you so much for affording us an opportunity to speak to you as a Board of Commissioners. There's one particular issue on the agenda. I think it has something to do with the raises for nurses and the bonuses for the top administrators, if I'm not mistaken. Today, myself, as I represent our church and the community, as well as the Southern Christian leadership, the president is on his way, as well as a couple of the pastors. Today, I just wanted to kind of share some concern about the proposed bonuses. If you work in any large organization, you know without a shadow of a doubt that the real worker bees are the people that are in the grind day in and day out in the hospital, which are your staff, your nurses, doctors, janitors, you name it. Those are the people that are really have their hands to the plow and are making this ship move forward. The administrators are very important to any organization because they're the ones that make sure that resources are provided and organization is provided and structure is provided. So there's no issue of who's more important than the other. But as a taxpayer in Broward County, I had a little concern with the bonuses that perhaps will be given to the executives, only because, I think that maybe now's not the right time with some of the situations and some of the other things that you're trying to clear up as a board and as a house put a district. I'm just thinking that maybe now is not the right time. Not that it should never happen, but now may not be the right time. And I think also that it's important to understand that, maybe there are some other things that could be done with the excess of monies that have been accumulated. I know there's a shortage of nurses. So, I don't know the possibility of this, but I'm speaking from a community perspective. Maybe there could be some creation of scholarship funds to give to as an incentive to get people to go into nursing, particularly the minorities to go into nursing. As you all know, nursing is expensive, and to go to even BC, local colleges, it's expensive. So when you talk about giving bonuses to the administrators or those top tier people, I think that maybe you should just hold off and look at some other things that could be done. I know I read in the paper something about private hospitals do it all the time. Well, when you're private, you have different funding sources and you have other ways of funds that come in. But when you're public and all of your money is coming from taxpayers, I think that it's prudent to be a little bit more hesitant to divvy out those funds, particularly to administrators who perhaps are already making six figures or more. So it's just my concern that maybe right now is not the right time. I'm not saying never, I'm not saying you don't reward the administrators ever for their efforts, but I think when you look at the lack of nurses, the need for nurses in other areas of the district, and I don't know how feasible this is. I don't know if the attorney knows, but maybe there should be some talk about creating scholarships for community people who want to go into nursing but just can't afford it. So thank you so much for this opportunity to share. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, Commissioner Vicente Thrower from the SCLC.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Chairman, Commissioners. I too am here sharing the same thoughts that a couple of months ago we talked about and said that we are the shareholders and stockholders and all that good stuff. I appreciate the due diligence that you all have done to talk about how bonuses and stuff should be done and handed out. But honestly, I think that we should look at these from a shareholder's perspective and say, is this the right time to be doing this, and what other things can we do? I think what he said was absolutely correct. Blanchita High School has a medical program. How are we encouraging those young students to come to Broward Health? What is the incentive to even do so? If we have money in order to encourage people to come and be part of the Broward Health family, we should look at how do we spend that money and how can we encourage others to be part of Broward Health. And I applaud the chairman of that board for being creative and looking at what other people are paying. But truth be told, we are a public health care system. And when people sign up and say they want to work here and be part of this administration, they sign up knowing coming in that they're working for a public health care system. They're not working for Baptist or anybody else. They're working for Broward Health. And in Broward Health, at some point, what isn't written in your job description is service. And service don't always come with a salary. Service comes with a commitment to the people and say that I want to provide that service, that level of service to this community. So I think we look at that as you move forward. That should be in the back of your head that they came saying service, and Broward Health is giving them that opportunity. Now, when they leave, they may go to a Fortune 500 company and say, "Hey, I served and I did all this good stuff at Broward Health." But for now, service should be at the top of our agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, Commissioner, Reverend Gary Johnson from the SCLC.
Good afternoon. It's good to see you, board members. I'm going to yield at this time and I'll come back at a later time, if you don't mind.
No.
Thank you.
It's fine. We have another meeting immediately following this meeting, so. Anyone else?
No one else.
Okay. This is the February board meeting technically. So I know it might be a little bit confusing if you're looking at various agendas, but this particular agenda doesn't have a whole lot of items on it, but the next would be, well, actually there are no minutes. This would be Dr. Todd. You have the medical staff credentialing.
I'm here to present the February credentials report to the board. The detailed credentials report from Broward Health, Coral Springs, Imperial Point, Medical Center, and Broward North in your packets under tabs 1A through 1D. Here's a high-level summary. System-wide, there was a total of 42 new positions and 11 allied health professionals initial appointments. There were 96 physicians and 26 allied health professional reappointments. There were a total of 18 voluntary resignations, and there were no involuntary resignations or suspensions. All appointments and reappointments were reviewed and approved by the C&Q committee and MEC at each facility in accordance with medical staff bylaws and rules and regs. There were no reportable events to the National Physician Data Bank. This concludes my report. And I'm respectfully requesting approval for the board for the credentials report.
Thank you. If I could have a motion to
I make a motion to approve the medical changes.
second the motion. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Ms. Vanessa, you deferred your report to the next board meeting?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The consent agenda is moved, I'm assuming, to the March meeting as well. The acceptance of our January financials is deferred. Are we, Ms. Barrett, we're able to defer that to the March meeting immediately following this meeting? Correct? Okay. As far as new business, and maybe Dr. Toff, you might want to address the recommended bylaw changes from the United Medical Staff Council.
Okay, on January 19th, the United Medical Staff received a ballot from the medical staff offices to each facilities, and they voted affirmatively to recommend the following 3 changes to the medical staff bylaws. The first recommended change was to create a process to have an expedited approval process just in case the board meeting is canceled. Because when the board meeting is canceled, when there's a slate of providers was supposed to be presented for approval, for both initial appointments and reappointments, some of these reappointments will be expired, and also these new appointments, some of these physicians have been waiting for many months to get on staff, and when the board meeting is canceled, they will not be able to do that. So the proposal is to have an expedited process for the board to meet and approve these recommendations from the MECs and the C&Q from each facility. The second proposal is to have the provisional status extend to 2 years instead of 1 year as it is now. The purpose is to make sure that the new people coming into provisional status fall into the 2-year cycle, like the active members that are being reappointed. We send out the application 6 months in advance. As it is now, after they are appointed for 1 year, they're only on board for 6 months, and now they're receiving another application to reapply for reappointment. So sometimes that can create a little bit dissatisfaction from the providers. The third recommendation is to allow medical scribes to be used in our health system. Right now, we don't have provisions to regulate that. So those are it's a high-level summary of the 3 recommendations. In your packet, there's the actual detailed language change that's going to need to be changed in our bylaws for these 3 recommendations. Any questions?
Any questions?
At this time, I haven't really had it.
No, I appreciate that. Ultimately, at least for my purpose, I appreciate you sharing the recommended changes. I'd like to ultimately get some form of staff recommendation, but ultimately input as well. And I want to better understand, each of the various issues. I mean, on the face, at least, some of them seem certainly reasonable, but I don't know what the particulars are.
So I'll take that. The 3 items that were addressed, we're comfortable with them. We just would wish that we withhold action for a month or 2 so that we can make a couple of language changes just to specify. As an example, it talks about expedited privileging for someone that's never been through the peer review process or has never had an investigation. We don't think that was the intent of the way it was written, but we just wanted to clean it up to make it show that they don't have any negative marks as a result of the peer review process. So there's just a couple of cleanup items like that that we would wish to make a couple addendums and send back to the committee for review. That's in conjunction with medical staff, obviously.
And Dr. Tyler, you may be able to speak on behalf of the medical community with respect to this issue. Is the collaboration between the medical staff and the administrative staff on this particular area, is that going in a way that is amenable to both parties? I mean, I want to understand, because I want to make sure that we're advancing these things, and I certainly don't want to wait any unnecessary period of time, and I respect the need to clean these things up and make sure that both the intent and the four corners of the agreement are proper. But
Sure.
are we
happy
working
to
together
broker-
proper? Are we working together like cordially here? That's what I want to make sure.
I'll be happy to broker the meeting to make sure we clean up the language and bring it back to the board if that's what's recommended.
Great.
Dr. Tao, is that something you can have done by the next board meeting for us to?
Yes, we can shoot for the next board meeting at the latest to the meeting afterwards.
Okay, and if that's not gonna hold you back from anything, if it takes a month to get this, right?
I don't think so.
Okay, yeah, it's just, I would like an opportunity to see a final revised copy and maybe get some input, as to just explaining to me what the impact may or may not be, if there's anything we need to think about. And just seeing this now and not really having a chance to kind of understand it, because it seems reasonable, like Commissioner Yuri says. So I think by the next board meeting, if we have that language revised, I think we'll be in good shape. If we could maybe get this a week ahead of time, or do we have committee meetings, I assume, before that, so maybe we can get it through the committee meeting and be done, and so we have a chance to flesh it out.
Definitely, we'll convene the group together sometime next week, and then we can work through the language changes, and we'll present it to you next meeting.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and ideally, when whatever ultimately comes to this body, I'd like to know that both sides, if you will, have collaborated, and to the extent there's issues from either side, I want to have an opportunity to speak with those folks.
Just to be
as well.
clear, both sides did collaborate on these changes. It's just that the final languages were not finally vetted before it was presented.
Okay. Fair enough. Thank you. Any comments from commissioners? No? No? All right. Then a motion to adjourn the February board meeting, please. Great. So moved.
Seconded?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.